What's up, everybody? Welcome to Football Diehards and welcome to the Wednesday show. And on this show, as always, we're going to go by position, talk about the things that do stick out on a Wednesday. And as always, I'm here with Jamie. Jamie, what is up? Are you looking forward to week 10?
Yeah, man, how you doing this week? We didn't get to talk on Sunday, so I'm happy to be back for a week 10.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Had a pretty good week 9 thanks to Nick Chubb. Was able to dominate all my cash games. So, yeah, I really can't complain.
Same, I had 5 snowflakes in cash and still easily won them with Chubb and Lamar Jackson. So apparently in a low-scoring week, that was all I needed.
Yeah, it was one of those weeks. So yeah, glad we both were on the Chubb side there, especially in cash. That was huge. He was pretty low owned. But yeah, speaking of this week, this is a very interesting week here. Looking forward to it. And as always, I say we start with quarterbacks. And so up top, we have Kyler Murray, who is questionable, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, who may or may not play. So out of this bunch, there's one clear option that sticks out for me. I wonder if it's the same for you. But who are you liking up top here?
For me, it's Josh Allen. I mean, that was so weird what happened to them against the Jaguars, but that was one of many things that in week 9 that had people chirping away on Twitter. But I mean, just in this game set up against the Jets, I think when I've checked earlier this morning, the Bills had a team total of 35, which is, I think, the highest that I've seen this week. I'm going to have to go back and double check that and see if that's changed at all or if it's gone down. But I mean, the Jets do not have the defensive personnel or the pass rush to give Allen any kind of bother at all. And with his full complement of receivers, the fact that Zach Moss looks like he's going to miss this game, I think Buffalo is going to be more pass heavy. So he's my guy up top. What about you?
Yep, Josh Allen was probably my second favorite guy up here. The reason being is he had a really poor game last week. I mean, that game was insane. Like I did not know what I was watching. 6-9, Jacksonville wins. Makes is absolutely no sense. So they did price him down 300, and I'm looking at the ownership. I kind of expected him to come in projected to be a little bit lower because they're coming off a really bad game, but no, Josh Allen's actually the highest projected own right now on a Wednesday, 16%. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. I will be going back to Josh Allen. I think it's a great time to do so. I just wish people were more off of him after that bad week. But for me, the guy I like a little bit more than Josh Allen. He's actually 300 cheaper. That's going to be Tom Brady. And Josh Allen has a really good matchup, and as does Tom Brady against Washington. Washington's defense is very bad. I love the stacking options with Brady. We have Godwin. We have Mike Evans, who I'm very high on this week, and Brown might come back. I'm hoping he kind of doesn't, so I can go heavier on Godwin there. And then Gronk might come back as well. Yeah, I like Tom Brady a lot against Washington. But yeah, Josh Allen, Tom Brady are going to be the guys I'm looking at up top.
So the thing came out today that said Godwin was dealing with a foot injury. If there's any kind of question with him, do you still like Brady as much, or might you go a different route there?
I'll still like Brady a little bit, but yeah, I do see that he did not practice, right?
Yeah, right, that's correct.
Yeah, with no God, if Godwin does not play, if Brown does not play, and if Gronk does not play, yeah, I'll definitely be off of Brady.
Well, then you got to like Mike Evans, though, which I guess we'll get to.
Oh
We
yeah,
should we
Evans would
shouldn't
be a
jump
must
the gun there.
yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So Tom Brady coming in at about 10% ownership, Josh Allen 16%. Those are the two guys I like up top. But moving down a little bit, I'm kind of struggling to find guys in this lower range to mid range. I think for quarterback, for me, I'm going to go up and get either Josh Allen or Tom Brady in my lineup. But going down a little bit further, we have guys like Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson's on the IR, Jalen Hurts, Tannehill, Cousins, Matt Ryan. Out of that little bunch, anybody stick out to you there?
I do like Dak this week. It's the Cowboys are not as predictable as we thought they were going to be. I mean, last year their pass rate, or when last year and then early on in this year with Dak, their pass rate over expectation was so high, but they've since balanced it a lot more. So game script really has a lot to do with what Dallas does, and the game script favors the run in this one for them. So it's such a good matchup for Dak. I mean, Atlanta is last in both sack rate and quarterback hit rate. So, especially if he gets Michael Gallup back, this is one where Dak could really go off. The Cowboys have a team total of 31 and a half. but again, it's a little bit of a concern that it's going to be more of an Elliott Pollard week than like a passing eruption. But at under 7,000, I think it's a pretty good deal, especially after they got embarrassed by Denver. They're going to want to come out firing here. And I think Russell Wilson's back. Is that correct? I thought I saw he was cleared
Yeah,
to play in week
yeah, I
one.
think he was practicing Wednesday, so he should be good to go.
Yeah, so I don't mind that in GPP. I mean, 6,700. He's always more expensive than that. And against Green Bay, who's missing their secondary still, um, I don't mind that in GPP. But I think of that realm, Dak would be the one that I'd consider for cash.
Yeah, I'm with you there. This will be actually the cheapest Russell Wilson has been all year, so something interesting to know. But yeah, I'm with you on Dak there. I guess, yeah, like you mentioned the concerns. Are they going to run the ball a ton, use the run game a lot? But we see, like in the past 2 weeks, they are passing the ball a lot. 39 passing attempts against Denver, 51 against the Patriots. So we'll see what happens there. I guess the other guy that I did like a little bit is going to be Matt Ryan. The problem with Matt Ryan is every time I play this guy, it just seems like he does bad. So I think he's in a great spot against Dallas. Dallas has given up the third most DraftKings points to opposing quarterbacks. So yeah, don't hate Matt Ryan. Doesn't have a ton of targets to throw to. Pitts, Gage, but he did have 31.52 DraftKings points last week. Don't hate Ryan. Any thoughts on Ryan? Any thoughts on Jalen Hurts, 6,500? Any interest in him?
I like Ryan for sure at 6,000. It this right now this is the highest totaled game, so you can if you can get a savings with some upside and a potential shootout. He's got two or more touchdowns in six of his last seven, so Ryan seems to be a pretty safe one. And yeah, Jalen Hurts always needs to be considered, just with his rushing upside. Denver, there's no reason Denver should have done what they did last week, with all the defensive personnel that they're missing and still will be missing this week. So, I mean, I don't. Denver really kind of boggled my mind last week. But with Hurts, the Eagles only have a team total of 21 this week. They're going west. The fact that Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, and Kenneth Gainwell are all of a sudden really like stepping forward with the rush. It hurts his upside a little bit, but Hurts is a dual threat thing where you can play him for sure.
Yep, I think he's cash viable, but I'm not sure he's going to be my cash quarterback this week. Hertz is coming in at about 3% ownership, and we see that Matt Ryan coming in, same thing, 3% ownership. Russell Wilson, 4%. So all those guys are pretty low owned. And like I said, Dak Prescott, 7%, Tom Brady, 10%, and then Josh Allen, the highest at 16%. So, yeah, I mean, down in the bottom range, is there anybody else sticking out to you? Because I cannot find one guy down here that really has any interest for me.
There's no one for cash, that's for sure. I'm okay with Taylor Heineke for GPP at 5,400, just given the game script here. And Tampa Bay has given up the 10th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. This is one where you want to play game script with him. That if he's going to be throwing a lot, he has that upside to pay off a price tag like he has. And I guess you can do that and stack him with McLaurin in a game like this, who shouldn't have any resistance on the defensive end. Tampa Bay stops the run well, so they'll have to pass more. But I mean, other than that, down in that range, I'm not really looking at anybody below Matt Ryan. You?
Yep, nothing. I think, like I said, I'm just going to go up. I'm going to play. I think it's right now it's between Josh Allen or Tom Brady. If Godwin is out, might just go to Josh Allen. I think it's a great time to go right back to him after a poor performance because, yeah, you can't get any worse than what happened last week. So I think that's about it for quarterback. Let us move on to running back here. And, yeah, this is going to be very interesting to talk about. So at running back up top, we have Christian McCaffrey. We have Alvin Kamara. We have Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler. Then Nick Chubb is on the COVID-19 list, may or may not play. Did you hear anything recently about Nick Chubb? Last I heard was there was no update. Did you hear anything recent today?
No, just that the last thing I heard was that, I mean, since it was Tuesday, I think he has a shot. He's got to get like 2 negative tests on Thursday and Friday, and then go through some kind of thing on Saturday or something like that. So um, I'm with you though. There wasn't really any updates on him, but I think the fact that it was Tuesday at least gives hope that he's
Mhm.
going to play, which will be sad day to all of us that want to roster Dearness Johnson at his price tag. But as of right now, I don't know. I haven't seen an update on Chubb either.
Okay, but yeah, up in this range, who is the? There's a lot in this range I really do like. So I'm curious to hear who is your number one guy in this range.
Oh my God, there's so much up here, and I mean, I gotta first mention, my number one is not McCaffrey, and I'm hurting saying that because we're talking about McCaffrey right now. McCaffrey at his peak was well over $10,000 when he was doing what he was doing, and I mean, immediately he went past 100 scrimmage yards in his first game. Um, and it wasn't even a full workload. If his workload increases, 8,400 is far too cheap, especially against a run funnel defense like Arizona. That said, I'm not quite looking his way yet. I love Jonathan Taylor once more. He is all of a sudden become like almost the RB1 in fantasy, which a lot of people predicted. I was a tiny bit less or a tiny bit more skeptical on that just because of who they had, the fact that he would be share passing downs, give up passing downs to Naeem Hines. But even with that, even with the big game that Hines had last week, Taylor still ran more routes in the passing game. He ran for, what was it, over 9 yards per carry against the Jets, and he has pretty much as good a matchup. I think the Jets at the time had given up the most fantasy points per game to running backs. The Jaguars are third. Again, the game script is well in Taylor's favor. So, I mean, there's another guy I have up here. I'm curious to know if you're just as high on too. But Taylor looks like the one that if I'm going to spend up in this range right now is the one that I kind of want to bank on in cash.
Yep. So there's three guys I like in this range, and I'm going to try my best to get all three of them in there. And my number one guy as well would be Jonathan Taylor. Like everything is, trending upwards for this guy. He's at home. They're favored. Phenomenal matchup against Jacksonville. This is a guy that has just been on a roll as of late. I mean, the last bad game he had was, I think it was like week 3, was like the last bad game he's had. After that, he has not had a performance under 20 DraftKings points. So you have sign me up for Jonathan Taylor. The other guy, like you mentioned, Christian McCaffrey, it's just crazy to think about it. This guy is full go. And last week, I kind of thought he'd be a little more limited than he was. They actually gave him 14 rushing attempts, and they threw him the ball 5 times. So you got 18 touches, which is a lot more than I expected. I thought it'd be a little bit less than that. So if he is full go, if they do give him a full workload here, 8,400 is just way too cheap for Christian McCaffrey. And as of now, we see him coming in at the 18th highest owned running back at 4%, which is it's nuts. I know there's a lot of great plays below him, but that's nuts, right?
Yeah, and if that ownership stays there, I'm going to hammer him in GPPs. And the other thing going for him too, I'll admit I'm not really sure. I mean, PJ Walker is not a running quarterback, right? um, I know he's flashed some speed, but the fact that his average his yards per target is 5.6, which is awful, really suits McCaffrey even more in this one too. So that one's going to be one that I kind of watch closely all week because I want him to be my number one guy. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it mentally yet.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, 18% owner. That's very intriguing. We'll see where that is at by Sunday, though. And then the other guy I'm looking at is going to be Najee Harris. So, of course, there's no Juju, and they might be missing Claypool as well. So, I think they're really going to rely on Harris, and they get a phenomenal matchup at home against Detroit. And this is a guy that they're feeding him the ball. Earlier in the year, they would throw him the ball a lot. Now they're actually, throwing the ball a lot as well, but they're giving him a lot of touches in terms of like the rushing game. 22 rushing attempts in week 9, 26 in week 8, 24 in week 6, 23 in week 5. He has not had less than 20 rushing attempts since week 4. So yeah, I really like Harris. They're giving him a great workload, and the matchup's perfect. So I do like Harris a lot. Any thoughts on Harris? You like him as well?
Oh yeah, that was the other guy. I figured I was going to let you say one, but yeah, he's the 1A to Taylor right now, and again, the only thing right now my plan is to get both those guys in, because I think they are in a tier of their own, even with a lot of the other running backs also in good spots as well. I think those are great cash plays with the matchups they have. And the only thing that might keep me from one of them is I just decide that McCaffrey is way too cheap at 8,400, whereas these guys are, I guess you can say kind of appropriately priced at their price right now. So we'll have to see as that goes on. I also like Dalvin Cook a lot this week, and I think that we're going to probably wind up getting him. I'm just checking. He's at 9% right now, below the guys we've mentioned. So he's one that I'm going to like a lot in GPP. Well, this is also assuming the trouble that's kind of popped up with him isn't going to affect his status on Sunday. As of right now, I haven't seen anything to say that it will, but this is a high totaled game at 52.5. 80% snap rate in week 9 against Baltimore. The Chargers get decimated by running backs. They are another run funnel offense, because the scheme just doesn't put more than 6 or 7 defenders in the box. That's how they stop wide receivers so well. So they've given up the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. So I really like Cook as a GPP alternative to these two.
Yeah, and then another guy we didn't even talk about, Austin Eckler, who's actually coming in at the
Yeah.
highest owned projected right now, 20%. And I'll be honest, I like Taylor more than Eckler. I like Harris more than Eckler. And I like McCaffrey more than Eckler. But I still think Eckler's a solid play here.
Yep, I do too. Minnesota's given up 140 rushing yards a game on the ground.
Oof.
That's really a nice spot for Eckler, especially when you don't even have to run well with him because he's so featured in the passing game. But you're right. I mean, I'm with you. I like all those guys better than him, Cook included, which is a tough one to say. But yeah, that's kind of where we are right now.
Yep. So yeah, lots sticking out in this top range. So hopefully we can find some value. But we'll go down a little bit. We have guys like Zeke Elliott, Aaron Jones. We have Swift, Patterson, Connor, James Robinson is questionable, Leonard Fournette, and so out of those guys, a couple are sticking out for me. Any sticking out for you down here?
Yeah, Zeke was a chalk bust last week. His price didn't move. He It did come out that he kind of lost work to Pollard because of a knee contusion. He should be fully healed. Watch, of course, to see if that's an issue, but he hasn't been limited yet. Falcons giving up the 9th most fantasy points. The Cowboys are to running backs. The Cowboys are 9-point favorites. This really looks like Zeke gets back over that 20 touch count, which was last week was the first time he was below that since week 2. So at 7,000, he seems wildly underpriced. Then on the other side of that game, you gotta like Patterson again at 6,600. With no Ridley there, Patterson is being featured in the passing game. It was a little concerning last week that Mike Davis came back to match him in touch counts and in snap counts. But I mean, with Dallas giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs, this looks like another game where Davis should kind of fade into the background and Patterson's featured a little more. So I like the 6,600 price tag on him. How about you? How about you on those guys and anyone else in that mid range?
Yeah, I think Zeke's fine for sure, but I do like the guys above him a little bit more. So I think if I have the salary, I'll go and get them. But yeah, Zeke's coming in at the 2nd highest owned, projected at 19%. And then you mentioned Patterson, who's coming in at the 8th at 11%. And yeah, I do like Patterson quite a bit. And yeah, going against Dallas, a really good matchup here. And Patterson is somebody that just keeps on getting it done. 22 DraftKings points last week, 18 the week prior, 14, 18, 34, 16, 23. His worst game was in week 1, had 8.7 DraftKings points. So he's been like fairly consistent, averaging 19.6 DraftKings points in a good matchup here against Dallas. So yeah, I think Patterson's pretty good play here. And then the other guy that does stick out a little bit is going to be James Conner. So no Chase Edmonds. I think it's going to help out a little bit. Don't love the price tag and honestly don't love the matchup at all, but he's going to get a solid workload. Should get the majority of the touches here. So 6,300 James Conner, I don't hate. James Conner coming in at about the 5th highest owned, but out of that bunch, I think that's about it on my part.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I kind of expected Connor's price tag to come up into this range, and I kind of expected that it wouldn't be my favorite thing to see it there, and that's kind of how it is. And I'll always I'll always look Swift's way, at least in GPPs, just given how he's used in the passing game. He's basically got the same passing game usage as like Eckler and Kamara, who we're talking about up near the top. So at 6,800, he's back below 7,000 after kind of a dud game that he had before the bye. Pittsburgh is strong against the run, but not against running backs catching the ball. So I think he's in a okay spot for GPP here too. But like you said, I like the guys up above him a lot more. So I'll probably find the extra salary for that.
Yeah, I think lineup construction is going to be very rough this week because I just like so many of these guys up top, and then like at the mid range and lower tier, not a ton sticking out. So hopefully there is some value plays at wide receiver. There's some sticking out for me, so I think it should be okay. But going down in this like low range punt range for running back, of course we talked about Nick Chubb. If Chubb is going to be out, then that is going to make Johnson a very very good play. But we'll have to see. But yeah, if Chubb's out, it's going to be Johnson probably in every one of my lineups.
Yeah, that's. I mean, he showed how good he was in that one game that he erupted. I mean, 4,700. He's basically free. And the Patriots, as successful as their defense has been vulnerable to the run. They've given up the eighth most fantasy points per game. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't really see fading him, like where the benefit of that is, just given the usage he's going to get on a running team.
Yep, for sure. As of now, ownership's not really popping up on him, but once we get clarification if Chubb is in or out, I'm assuming he's going to be probably one of the highest owned running backs on the slate. But anything else sticking out to you in this punt range?
Yeah, I like Devin Singletary, which I hate saying because I've never liked Devin Singletary. But if Moss is out, he should. They've been pretty much running an even timeshare, with Moss seeing all the passing routes. So Singletary's never really had the fantasy value. But if he has kind of the backfield to himself this week, this is the Jets team that has given up the most fantasy points per run to running backs, and that Jonathan Taylor just ran all over. So he's also 4,700. I don't think I really like him as a pivot to Johnson, but I do kind of like him using him alongside him as two cheap running backs if there's like expensive teams that we want to stack their passing game. Like Dallas, if you want to get Dak with Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, or who else is up in that top range there? Brady. If all the Tampa Bay receivers are healthy, you want to stack Brady with all of them. Like that's a move I can kind of get on board with.
Yep, that was the other guy I was looking at. If Zach Moss is out, I will be going to Singletary. If Moss and Chubb is out, I'm with you. I'm going to be going to Johnson. But yeah, those are kind of the two pump plays that did stick out for me. Hopefully, either Chubb or Moss is out, so it makes it a lot easier for lineup construction there. Anybody else we didn't touch on that you want to talk about for running back?
Um, no, I mean not as of this second. Michael Carter's been used in the passing game so much, and Mike White is starting, so 5,600. He's not the most awful play down in that lower range either. Just with the passing upside, but it's such a bad matchup against the Bills, and they're good against pass catching backs too. So that's kind of an extreme mixed multi entry for me. But those are the two guys, Singletary and Johnson, that I'm looking at in this range.
Yep, me too. We'll wait for Sunday to see what happens there. But going to the wide receivers now, up top we have Devontae Adams, we have AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, TJ McLaurin, Stephen Diggs, Chris Godwin, and then CeeDee Lamb. So out of this bunch, which guy are you looking at the most?
Well, it's as long as as long as Rodgers is back, it's going to be really hard to fade Adams at under 8,000. Um, just given the target share, I'm just looking up now. He's got almost a 39% target share with Rodgers as quarterback. If Rodgers doesn't play again this week, I'm not interested because we saw that offense was pretty inept against not a good defense. But Seattle has been beaten the second most of any team in the league for passes 20 yards or above. So Adams has got a really good floor and ceiling in this one. So that's going to be one we got to watch for Adams' status this week. But he's definitely my favorite up there. How about you? What do you think of AJ Brown? He's 100 cheaper. It's at a fair price. I think it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a fair price, especially with no Derrick Henry nowadays. For me though, it's Adams as well. But yeah, Brown's fine. But I see myself kind of trying my best to pay down at wide receiver so I can go up and get some of these stud running backs. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's really hard to fade a guy like Devontae Adams. Brown's definitely in play as well. I think a lot of these guys are in play. But the guy I'm looking at the most is going to be Stefon Diggs against the Jets here. I think he's in a great spot. He's somebody that has been, consistent this year. He just has not had that big game. And I would not hate a Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs stack. He is 7,500. And yeah, I like him a lot here in this spot. And then another guy is Chris Godwin, who, like you said, he's questionable. And then he was not practicing Wednesday. If he does play, I really like Chris Godwin. If Brown does play, I'll probably lower my ownership. But yeah, Chris Godwin, I think, is in a great spot. Great matchup, but the injury is definitely a concern.
Yeah, which is too bad because I mean, per dollar, he looks like an equally good play as Devontae Adams at 7,100. Um, Last I saw, Brown was still in a walking boot, so I
Mhm.
wouldn't be optimistic about him coming back this week, even though he does have the questionable tag right now. But yeah, Godwin at 7,100 seems like a nice value against Washington, who has given up the most catches in the slot and the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers.
Yep, for sure. Godwin's coming in at about 10% ownership. We see that Stefan Diggs coming in at 18%, making him the second highest owned. Devontae Adams, 20% owned. So moving down a little bit, let's say this 7K range to 6K up in this range here. For me, there are a couple guys that do stick out. I really do like CeeDee Lamb, 7,000, but I also do like Amari Cooper at $800 cheaper. I think both of those guys are in play. Keenan Allen's another guy I really do like, 7K. He's somebody that I think I've talked about every single week, and rightfully so. He's always going to get a ton of targets, a ton of receptions, had a very good game last week. So those are kind of the guys I'm looking at. Do you like any of those guys and anybody else sticking out?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on those guys. One again, I talked about it last week. We touched on a couple of places where it seems like Dallas's skill players were underpriced, and it seems like they are again. They busted against Denver, but they got a team total of 32. Lamb's price has come down 600 from last week. Amari Cooper's has gone up 500, but he's not expensive enough. Zeke's didn't move. Um, so yeah, I'm with you for sure on those guys. Definitely with you on Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's in a great spot against Minnesota. I think we gotta mention again that if Brown and Godwin do sit, I'm locking Mike Evans at 6,900. I think he's a good play anyway at that price, even if Godwin is healthy. And then Deontay Johnson, he was disappointing in the Monday night game against the Bears, but this is a really good matchup against Detroit, who doesn't have the secondary to cover him. He only got 6 targets last week after getting 13 and 13 the week before. So, I mean, his price went up even after the dud game, I guess in anticipation of the matchup. It's a little concerning that Freiermuth is apparently the end zone guy that they throw to all the time here, but Deontay is always in play for me in cash with his expected target share too.
Yeah, especially with no Juju, and then Claypool might not play as well. So I think that
Yeah.
makes Johnson very, very intriguing.
Yeah, I'm with you though that I don't always like to play a running back and a wide receiver together. I did it last week with Zeke and Cooper, who were both underpriced. Um, I'm not a big fan of Najee and Deontay together, even though it's fine, really, because they both should get theirs, especially if Claypool sits. But if I had to pick one, I'm not settling on Deontay Johnson when I can get up to Najee Harris as the running back with all the value at wide receiver that we can look for.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. But yeah, going down to some value plays here. Anybody sticking out under this 6K range for you?
There's not as much as we had last week, which makes this a little tricky. My failsafe T Higgins and his $5,300 price tag is not on the. They're on a buy this week, so I can't be going to that. I do like Jarvis Landry a good amount, especially if Chubb sits. Dearness Johnson has proven that he can fill in nicely, um, but they'll have to throw a little bit more. Landry's average depth of target is so low that you can't ever really use him in a GPP because he doesn't have that tournament winning upside. Um, and they ran so much with Chubb against Cincinnati, and they won the game so easily they didn't have to throw so much. I got to figure that if Chubb sits, they have to throw against New England a lot more. And at 5,200, Landry seems like a solid value with Odell gone there. And then who's the other one that I saw in that range? Oh, Cole Beasley, same price tag. His production's been inconsistent just because they have so many players in there. But with a 35 team total, I think there's more than enough to go around. And he got 11 targets last week, 13 the week before, 9 the week before that. So he's definitely someone that if I don't play Josh Allen or if I don't play Stephon Diggs because I'm paying for something else, he's a nice way to get exposure to that Bills team.
Yep, Beasley just seems way too cheap, 5,200. Another guy that does stick out to me, Russell Gage, I think is interesting. He's sitting at 5,000, going against Dallas here. So really good matchup, really high total as well. Had 8 targets last week. I don't hate some Russell Gage. They got to throw the ball to somebody. I know they have him, Pitts are the two main guys there, so I don't mind some Russell Gage. And then another guy that does stick out to me. Have you heard anything about Michael Gallup? It looks like he's going to return, right?
That's what I hear. I mean, he's expected to. I think they said he's on the optimistic side of 50-50 now. But yeah, I mean, that price tag.
He's 4K, yeah.
Yeah. That's a nice one.
Yeah, so if Gallup plays, that definitely opens up a lot of things. 4K against Atlanta, I really, really do like that. Yeah, other than that, though, like I'm really struggling to find anybody really cheap. I think we covered most of them. Was there any other guy that stuck out to you?
No, there's not a ton more. I don't like picking any Jets, but I mean, I guess you can look at Crowder under 5,000 just because his target share is so consistent. You know, he's the last 5 weeks 7, 9, 6, 6, 9. Like he's that PPR guy you want to look for. It's just the Bills' defense is so good that it's really hard to even in a game script where you have to think they'd be throwing with the Bills being up, it's really hard to get on board with playing any Jets in such a kind of inept offense. Bills have allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, the fewest to quarterbacks as well, and the fewest to running backs. I did not know that until this morning when we were looking at stuff for the show. Like that's an elite defense they have there. So I mean, you can put Crowder. I guess if you have a Bills stack and you want to bring one back, he'd be the most logical one to do, but I'm definitely not doing it in cash.
Yep, I'm with you there. But yeah, that's about it for the wide receiver. Hopefully, maybe some value opens up throughout the week. Gallup was kind of my one guy that I'm really looking at 4K if he does indeed play. But moving on to the tight end now, and yeah, tight end's very tricky for me. Not a ton of guys stick out. We have Kyle Pitts up top, Hawkinson, Schultz, Goddard, Zach Ertz, Dawson not questionable, Gronkowski questionable. Anybody sticking out to you up here?
Um, I don't like Schultz's price tag that much. I don't, I mean, we've said from the beginning that when we're picking a tight end, we either want to go all the way up or all the way down, and it's there's got to be a really good reason to play someone in that like 4,500 to 5,000 range. But I mean, I will say about Schultz that Blake Jarwin is on IR, and he played more snaps than all other Dallas wide receivers. And he also tied for the most routes run. So, it's Atlanta is a good matchup for tight end. They've given up the 12th most fantasy points per game to tight ends. So, I mean, I think if you have the extra money, definitely a GPP, definitely is part of Dallas stacks. But I think if you have the extra money, he's a nice play there. He'd be the one I want in that range. But I can't sacrifice the running backs we've talked about for Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to pay down at tight end for sure. Dallas Goedert sticks out 4,700. I don't love it though. Other than that, I think Rob Gronkowski's questionable. He did not practice Wednesday, but he was running down the sidelines for what that's worth. So maybe he does play, maybe he doesn't. If he does play, 4,400 kind of seems way too cheap for Rob Gronkowski. But yeah, I don't really see myself paying up for tight end. But there are some guys down low that are sticking out. The first one, being Dan Arnold, 3,500 going against Indy. The Colts here, I think Dan Arnold's pretty solid. He's getting a ton of targets. He's very cheap. I don't love it, but if you're going to give me, 7, 8, 9, 10 targets even at 3,500, you can sign me up there.
Yep, no problem with him at all. He doesn't seem to move as far as price tag goes. Indianapolis plays a zone defense, which sets up well for a lot of those underneath routes. So I mean, even if he doesn't score, he for cash at that price, I mean, he's fine with like a 6 catches for 50 yards. I mean, 3,500, you'd be happy with that, which I can see happening. And then Freiermuth, I under 4,000, I think you really have to give notice to him that he's got 13 targets over the last 2 weeks, 74% snap share, and he's scored 3 times. If Claypool sits, I'm really probably going to go to him against Detroit. Right now, he's kind of the cheap play that I like the most anyway, but I mean, that'll be the kind of kicker there, because based on his production last night, he really shouldn't be under 4,000 still.
Yeah, and I'm kind of shocked that he's coming in right now at 2% protected ownership, which, especially after a primetime game and doing that well, I think it should be a lot higher, right?
Yeah, and I imagine it will be. I think builds just aren't getting to him there yet, but especially if Claypool does sit, which we'll have to follow, you got to like him in that matchup against Detroit. Anyone else down in that below 4,000 range that sticks out to you other than Arnold and Freiermuth?
No, those are the two. Those are the two I'm probably going to rock with this week. I don't really see myself paying up for tight end with like so many great running backs that I want to fit in my lineup. And like you said, I don't want to risk that for Kyle Pitts, a Hawkinson, guys like that. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think those two guys are where I'm going to be this week.
Yeah. There's nothing really else that impresses me down there. I guess the 2 tight ends in the Minnesota Chargers game with such a good environment are okay as punts. Jared Cook and Tyler Conklin, especially Conklin. The Chargers have given up the second most fantasy points for tight ends, but there's no guaranteed snap share or production from them like you're going to get a floor from the other guys we talked about.
Yep, for sure. But we'll move on to the defense. We'll touch on defenses quickly here. So up top, I don't really ever pay up for defenses. So anybody like up top?
No, not really. I mean, I do like the Cardinals against, PJ Walker's terrible. And that offense should really struggle in Arizona. But I'm not paying $3,700 in cash to find that out when we have perfectly fine sub $3,000 plays, which I'm sure there'll be more than 1 or 2 as the week goes on. What about you? I mean, then the Bills, I guess, too, you can definitely look at, but they're even more. So, yeah, no. Anyone, are you willing to pay up into this range at all for these teams?
No, not really. I kind of don't like a ton of defense. I guess the ones that did stick out were the Panthers, 2,400, probably the cheap one I might go to, or the other one was the Titans. Don't love it, but I'm definitely not going down and playing Washington, Jaguars, Vikings. Vikings are okay, but I don't love it.
Yeah, I would imagine that I'll settle in at the Titans, who you mentioned at 2,600. That their pass rate is improving tremendously. I mean, we saw it again in a primetime game against the Rams. They had 5 sacks. They've got 10 over the last 3 games. They've got they've scored, their defense has scored double-digit fantasy points in 4 of their last 5 games. And Trevor Siemian is a quarterback that will induce defensive points. So, I mean, it's looking like they're the highest owned. I imagine it's going to stay that way. And in cash, that's probably the way I'll ride it.
Yep, I like it. Titans coming in at the highest owned right now, 10%. Cardinals, who are 3,700, 9%. The Colts, 3,600, 7%. The Lions, 2,300, 7% against Pittsburgh. Then Tampa Bay at top 5, 6% owned. So yeah, So that's about it for defense there. So yeah, we did it. We went through a lot of plays. I think Sunday is going to be very important. Tune back in on Sunday, 10 o'clock Eastern time in the morning. Lots of injuries, lots of things to look at. I think some value is going to open up. We'll talk some lineup construction. We'll talk by game Sunday. But Jamie, any final thoughts on tonight's show? Anything else you wanted to mention?
Nope, just join us on Sunday. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about.
Yep, for sure. Well, that is about it, guys. We'll see you Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning, bright and early. And can't wait for some week 10